The second game we have on this episode is the Menace Among Us.
Designed by Jeff Gum, artist is Hause, and published by Smirk and Dagger Games.
So picture this. Your dialect on your ship in space because the menace that is among you has sabotaged it. I'm making up a little bit to the story here, but... and you're floating in space with less oxygen every second. And you need to get the systems back operational before you all die. That's the game. Basically, there's some people on here trying to sabotage the ship. It has no energy. The good guys, or aka the crew members, are going to try to get the energy level up to 100%. The bad guys, aka the menace among you, is trying to basically suicide everyone and get the oxygen level down to 0, which they die as well. So they're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly the game, the concept of what's going on. Now, before you begin, what you're going to do, much like all these games that have hidden traitors and hidden roles, you're going to be passing out the agenda cards, which tells you if you're a good guy or bad guy. Except in a little bit addition to most games, you're going to create a deck of cards for each individual crew member and agent or a menace, because each crew member actually has like a role. Like you could be the saint, or you can be like, or the one of the bad guys was the contagion, or the butcher. I can't remember some of the other good guys, the vengeant or something. I can't remember if it's pronounced that way. Well, anyway, the point is each person has a primary goal, which I just explained, and a secondary goal, which might be like somebody else needs to be killed or 2 people need to be revealed or whatever, before you can win. You don't, that's an expert way. I do recommend playing with it though, because it just adds a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, you have a special ability that will happen typically whenever your card is revealed, or some other thing, like if you take a wound or whatever. And then it tells you a list of 13 cards that you're going to put into your deck. So you kind of, when you start the game, you have to build all these decks of cards, put them face down on the table and mix them up so that nobody knows which deck is which. Then you draft those, or not draft, but everybody just randomly grabs one. That's going to tell you if you're a good guy or bad guy. There is a neutral player if you're playing with uneven teams as well. But once you do that, you also get a character card. Everybody gets 3 of them to pick from. You choose one, everybody reveals. You go through and talk about your special abilities. These will have 2 printed special abilities. These are above deck actions. Sometimes they'll have requirements. Otherwise, you just kind of do what it says. And then it will also give you 7 cards that you'll add to your deck. So you're going to have a deck of 20 cards, 7 of them made up from your character and the other 13 made up from your role. But nobody knows what any of those cards are except for the ones on your character, those 7 cards. There are only like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 different types of cards or so, if I'm remembering correctly. There's like good cards, there's neutral cards, and there's bad cards. And we'll get to those in a minute. But once you have your characters in your decks, you're ready to begin the game. One person's going to be the mission leader. This is basically the start player. That's going to pass each round. And each player is going to take 1 action. And that's all you're going to do for the round. And then we'll talk about that. But the actions that you can take, there's the above deck action, which is the 2 special abilities printed on your player board. There is the below deck action, which you'll take 1 of the cards from your hand. You have 3 cards in your hand. You have a 4-card hand limit. You'll place 1 of those face down in front of you, and it sits there until the end of the round. So you can see who's contributing to the mission, basically, at the end of each round. The third type of action is just to draw a card. Now, after everybody's done an action, the mission leader will collect from face down cards from everybody else who contributed. They'll shuffle those up, and then they will flip out 1 at a time and resolve them. So you don't know who put those in, much like in like games like Battlestar Galactica. There's a bunch of cards that was contributed to the middle, but you don't know who put what in. But you do know who contributed. If not enough players contribute, which is basically half or less than half the players, there's a deck of cards in the middle. This is like a robot, and it will contribute a card too. That's kind of a pre-generated deck at the beginning of the game. Flip them over 1 at a time. Typically, it's going to spend oxygen to restore the energy to the ship, or it might give you oxygen, or some of the bad cards might be to backstab the mission leader and they take a wound, or they might get a brawl card in which they have to inflict a wound upon another player. There's some panic cards. People do stuff, and there's cards that make everybody... I can't remember if panic makes you discard cards. I forgot what that one does now.
It does, yes.
Okay, yeah, that is what it is.
All the players discard a card.
Right. There's also the opposite, which is like a command card or something that lets everybody draw a card. So like, there's a lot of cool stuff that you're not allowed to ever say what card you contributed, but you're allowed to say what type of card, meaning I contributed one of the good cards, or I contributed one of the bad cards, or one of the neutral cards, because there's a couple of neutral cards that repair the ship, and there's a couple that actually do bad things. So you don't want to, if you say I'm given a neutral card, you can take it either way, but some of them are good. So anyway, after that has been done, then you move on to the accusation phase, which is optional. There's a big giant cutout pistol that sits up on the stand, and anybody can grab that and say there's going to be a vote this round. On the count of, you talk a little bit. On the count of 3, everybody, points their finger or keeps their fist closed. And then whatever the majority is, that's what happens. If the majority of the players vote nothing, they have their fist closed, nothing happens, you move on. If the majority of players point to one person, that person is exiled, not killed. That's you become killed if you take 2 wounds from those brawl and other cards or special abilities that people have. When you're exiled, you basically lose the ability to do your player card abilities, but you can still contribute cards to the game or draw cards. But there's a reason why you want to do that, because if you exile a good player or a bad player, you get oxygen, but you also lose oxygen if you exile a good player. So you got to make sure you're doing the right thing. If somebody ever dies, there's a penalty to killing a good player. There's no penalty killing a bad player. It's obviously a benefit because now they're dead, and then they can't do any actions. But even though the Menace players have been exiled or killed, the good guys don't immediately win. They still have to get the energy level of the ship above 75%, which is noted by I don't think there's 100 spaces, but ideally it's like 75%.
There's a little red hash.
Yeah. And once you get past that, then you win as a group or whatever. So there's still things, that can really mess up, because you can, unless you're talking about it, and especially in case you can't talk about the cards, you might put a lot of cards in there that spend oxygen, but you don't have a lot of oxygen left. So anyway, that's pretty much the game, other than talking about it. Matt, you saw this. You thought it looked awesome.
Yes, it looks very interesting. I like the idea of contributing. Although I thought everybody would contribute.
Every time.
Yeah, every time. So I guess it kind of helps you deduce a little bit if not everyone is contributing.
It'd be really hard if everybody contributed every time.
Yeah, but it seems like a Battlestar Galactica and kind of similar to like Dead of Winter.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
But those games are very lengthy. I think this game seems like it's a little bit shorter than those games.
We played it twice in one night.
Yeah, so
so
no, it's much shorter.
It seems like it's a lot more streamlined version. Probably. I like the idea of the decks. Those seem pretty interesting. The pre-made decks and everything.
Oh yeah.
I wondered, can you kind of start figuring out if you played the game enough? Could you start figuring out who people are by what cards you start seeing? That was the only thing I kind of wondered about.
You certainly can.
Well, yeah, a lot of the bad guys are the menaces. Well,
yes.
They are just heavily burdened down by bad cards. So it's kind of hard in this game for us, or us, bad guys, and menaces.
You can tell what team Eric was on once.
Yes. To kind of get away with playing a lot of cards, because you are not given a lot of good cards, so you have to play a bad card, even though.
But you can offset that. This is what I was saying. You can offset that by picking a character that doesn't have a laser pistol. You two.
Well,
no, you wanted the laser pistol.
That was a desperation move.
Yeah. You shot me this the first action.
Yes, out of desperation, because of the previous game where I realized what Eric is saying, that if you have all bad cards in your deck, you can't hide.
Well, what I'm saying though, say you get the Menace character. You have a lot of cards. 13 of your 20 cards are bad, right? Pick the medic. I mean, obviously you're limited to who you get, but I mean, I think between 3 characters, you can find one that has some decent actions and do your above deck actions way more. Yeah, like for instance, one of the characters had helping hands and it had no requirement, I think, to do, which I think doubles up that person. You can just keep doing that a lot. And then you're not contributing any cards. And then when you need to, you start contributing a card. Like if you're going last and like 4 people's already contributed, then put one in, because it's less likely you'll be found out.
Right. It'll be one of you 4.
It kind of like is the same concept between the Resistance, where you have to know what mission you're going into and don't fail it like on a 2-player mission or a 3-player mission or whatever. Fail it on something that's a lot of people.
So yeah, you definitely have to play it very strategically. Like you said, you can't just go willy-nilly and always play bad cards.
It's more strategic than the good players, which is kind of makes it harder on the bad players. I do think it probably is easier for the good guys.
Right.
I feel that it is in part because the good players don't necessarily have bad cards.
They have a few, but usually you don't have to play them. You never have to really play them. You just draw more cards.
You have a big
I never
enough
played
hand.
a bad card.
Right.
Right.
I didn't either as a good player.
So it's really hard if you're a bad player to say,
Well,
that wasn't me.
Right. Well, I had to play a bad card this round.
Yeah,
that's all I had.
that's not a thing.
No, that's not a thing, right? So it's you're never in a position as a good player to do a bad action. Usually, you can do stuff that's a little shady, and sometimes you might want to do so if you have one of your objectives is to do something a little more shady.
I mean, I guess
otherwise,
since you
you're not
can't
really-
talk about what cards you play, saying that you played a neutral card is kind of shady in its own.
Yes.
So
Possibly,
there's
yeah.
that, but you're never going to play the bad cards. First off, I don't think any of the good characters have them.
Right.
And even if they did for some reason,
Well, I think they might have something like
well, you might get it from your character card, but
like a backstab or
Those are
a brawl
neutral
cards.
Those are neutral.
Right. Those are. Oh, yes.
yeah,
not
those are
bad cards.
neutral.
Because if
I'm
you
talking about
backstab
a
a
bad
bad
card.
person,
Like
that's a neutral
explosion.
thing.
Right.
Right.
Explosion's a bad card.
Right.
Yeah.
If for some reason you had that as a good player, there's nothing that you need to play it for.
Right.
Yeah. So it just, if you're a bad player and you're putting out a bad card because that's all you have in your hand, then you're going to be found out. It's going to happen. And that's why you start shooting people with the laser pistol.
But well, you can do it that way. But that's what I'm saying. I think, and maybe it might be obvious if you pick a good character like a medic and keep trying to heal people, or pick a character like the helping hands person and just help other people. It's like, why don't you play any cards? So I mean, I guess
Right.
that might be kind of obvious as well. But I mean, I don't know.
Helping hands might be too helpful. you won't look like you're helping, but not really help.
Yeah, but if you're
Whereas
helping
hands is giving your action to a good person.
Do you think it'd be better? I mean, obviously, depending on player count, because some player counts only have one menace. Do you think it'd be better if the menace players knew who the other menace was?
I don't think you'd really need to know. Well, it could help. It would be helpful in some occasions where me and the other menace are in this. We're putting in cards,
Right.
So
Right.
Only one of you put in a bad card.
But then you might.
Kind of thing.
How do you communicate that?
Yes.
Then you both put in
Yeah.
two.
Oh yeah,
But
if
it's
you
the
do,
same-
you can do some signals. You're like,
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. I also think it would be helpful if everyone didn't put in a card in turn. So you don't actually go around in turns, but if you want to put in a card, you put in a card.
And I think that would I like that idea of putting in a card, knowing who's contributing.
Mm-hmm.
But
I do too.
it would almost be cool if you can bluff some way, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how you would do it mechanically.
No, I'm not gonna put in a card.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how you would mechanically do it.
Right.
If you put in a bluff or bluff some way of putting it in, like maybe if a bag was passed around instead.
Oh,
And so
you just put in
pretend
a card
that
or
you're
not.
putting a card in.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
It is pretty nice to see the players
Who's
put out a
in.
card in front of
Right.
them. But I guess if you wanted to make it a little harder, you
It's
could
so
play,
much information.
Right, it is a lot of information. But if you had like a bag, you can put them in the bag as it went around the table, and then you can waste that action at that point. Because if you're like, I'm going to contribute a card, but you actually don't, and
so
then
you do
pass
nothing.
it.
Yeah.
You actually don't do anything, and then at the end, I guess they would pull out the cards and be like, 4 of you said that you put a card in, and only 3 of them are in there.
Right.
So
So now we have to take some off the top to make up the numbers. And that brings me to another thing. I think for me, I would have liked it if the deck that gets shuffled and is the random
little helper girl or whatever.
helper girl.
The robot?
Yeah.
The robot, yeah.
Mhm.
The robot deck had more
more
bad
bad.
cards.
I agree.
It would
There
make
was
sense.
So many good cards in there.
Yeah.
It's like
there was-
20 cards and 5 of them are bad. There's a
Okay.
lot of neutral cards though, so I mean I can't leave those out. But at the same time, it should incentivize all the players to put in enough to equal half or more.
I agree. Yeah.
Like, why aren't you contributing cards? Now we got to pull from this thing and they're all bad.
Right.
Like,
Or
that would
there's
make more sense.
There's a good chance that a bad card's going to come out.
There were several turns where all the cards that came out of that deck were definitely good cards.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
But that could be a difficulty level type of thing too. Like, have different deck constructions based on how hard you want it to be more for the good guys.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Just the idea that you can construct your own deck, period. Why make it so that you're stuck with this particular deck?
I guess you could just make it random, but there's a
Well.
lot of cards to shuffle and do randomly. So,
Yeah.
like,
Well, or you have a number of points that you can spend on various cards. You have to have a certain number of bad ones. You have to have a certain number of good, whatever. But you make your own deck at the start of the game, so it's kind of up to you how to play.
personally, I think it would probably be better if there's more bad
Sounds like
cards.
A lot of setup.
Yeah, there's a lot of setup. I think there should be like, you want to play hard mode, put these cards in, and like maybe 12 of the 20 cards are bad.
Yeah.
And then like 6 of the 8 are neutral, and there's only 2 good cards. You know, force the players to try to contribute.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put in this neutral card, but at least we're not going to get a bad card.
But I guess a counterpoint to that is it is a way for the bad guys to hide, because if they don't do anything, then and they're doing their special abilities, then those cards get added in, and then nobody gets mad at you because they are having to pull from the middle deck.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, we were okay with it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, okay, that's fine. It's gonna be good.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's bad, but maybe it should be I don't know. I don't remember the actual deck layout, but I know there was a lot of there's a ton of good cards in there.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool if that was a little bit laid out differently, or there was a set list for different difficulty levels. That'd be kind of cool.
House rules.
House rules. But I don't know. I like it. I like the voting too. I think the voting was pretty nice. Like,
Voting
you don't.
pistol.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, it doesn't, like most game. You're like, all right, we're voting on Eric. Who wants to vote? 3, 2, 1. It either happens or it doesn't. This one's just like, there will be a vote.
Yeah.
And then you can get
And you can
surprised.
talk, right.
You can talk, and it usually is going to be against somebody anyway.
It's got One Night Werewolf-ish, where, you point at, I'm pointing at George, and Tim's pointing at me, and whoever has the majority of the votes.
Yeah. So I like that. I don't know. I like this game. It's really fun.
It was fun.
The length is amazing for it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's shorter than all those other games.
Even at a high player count, it was still super short.
Right.
I mean, like an
Under
hour
and a half.
Yeah.
It was,
But that's with setup and everything too.
mm-hmm.
So super quick for what it is, and a lot of stuff going on. I liked all the characters. What y'all think about all the special abilities? Did you ever have a character that you thought was meh?
I didn't. I seen. Did you get to choose from 2 or 3? I forget right now.
3.
3. There was some that were definitely better than others in my mind, anyway.
But that's your choice.
Right.
That's true. Plus, you don't have to show anybody who you didn't pick.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of neat. Like, because we never really picked the medics at all.
Well, one time I had the medic and I had the guy with the pistol, and I was the bad guy, and I said, well,
pistol.
I'm just going to get rid of the medic and just grab the pistol, start shooting people.
Right.
This is why you didn't hide as a bad guy.
Yeah.
We won that game.
We
Yeah.
did win, and that was the strategy.
Whatever. We still
Take
killed
out
y'all
people.
both.
We wanted to die.
We lost.
anyway.
We ran
That's
out of
right. We
oxygen.
didn't. That
We
was our
didn't care.
goal.
We ran out of oxygen.
Yeah.
Super fun. Super fun game.
Yeah, it was a good one.
I don't know anything else.
Oh, I liked it.
I mean, it's a pretty simple game. I mean, there's a lot going on. I'm not saying it's a simple game, like
I mean, it's
Resistance, but
simple overall. There.
yeah, conceptually, it's simple,
Mhm.
but it's got a lot of cool stuff, interactions and all that stuff.
There is a player elimination in the game. However, it looks like once you kind of pare down either grouping, the rest of the game is gonna kind of get to the end anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
one way or the other.
Usually not very long after that though.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I would say is it would be cool if there's a little bit more neutral cards that had more positive and negative values at the same time. That actually might fix some of the stuff we're talking about.
What do you mean more positive
Like
and negative?
like for instance, the basic repair, you lose an oxygen, but you gain a repair.
Right.
Like advanced repair is
It's 2 to
a
1.
good card,
Mm-hmm.
right? But maybe it should be like something like that, but 2 oxygen for 2 repair. That's a lot of oxygen for a card.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so it would give you more incentive to be like, should I play this? Right now, that is a great card.
Right.
The 1 to 2,
Mhm.
and then like the one that raise morale that gives you 1 oxygen. They're almost no brainers just to play them.
Sure.
So maybe if there were more neutral cards that had like bigger positive and negatives at the same time,
Right.
you'd be like, I'm putting a neutral card in, and then when they come out, it's like, wow, who played this? This is a lot of oxygen, even though it gives good stuff.
Right.
I don't know. And give some of the Menace players more of those type of cards instead of like just a ton of explosions and backstabs.
Mhm.
Or how about the idea that certain hands of cards that were played, combinations of cards that ended up being played would have effects. Oh, there were 3 morale cards all together. Oh, that's terrible.
What do you mean?
Well, like everyone puts their cards in, and then you shuffle them up, and then you reveal what people played.
Oh, like a bust mechanism or something?
There's a bust mechanism, or just something where
If too many good cards are played, then something bad happens.
it's a reversal.
Oh, there is something like that in because you can only go up so many.
Oh, that's true.
So
On
many
the-
points or so many repairs in
You can only go up 5.
in one turn.
Each
That's a
thing.
lot.
That
That's
is
still
a
a
lot.
lot.
I guess the idea behind that is everybody can burn a lot of their advanced repairs. Like in a 6-player game, if all 6 people put in those for some reason, that's
Yeah,
a ton of
yeah.
oxygen. It ends up being 6 oxygen for only 5. So
Oh, that's true.
it's bad.
Mhm.
I mean, the
Right.
likelihood of that happening is low, but it still is a you can't do a lot because
Right.
I get
Yeah, but if you change that all around and said, well, too many of you were doing advanced repairs at the same time, so you actually caused an explosion.
Well, actually, yeah, that could just be the thing. Like if you put in more than 5 repairs, then you lose 2 or 3 oxygen.
Right.
So you really need to talk a lot more about what is being contributed. So more people are going to put in more neutral cards that way because they don't have a choice. Otherwise, if you put in a lot of good cards, you're going to break that. Because the idea behind that could be all of you are working too hard to get a lot of the repairs done, but you end up just like getting worked
Yeah.
up and using more oxygen.
Exhausting yourselves. Yeah.
There, bam. We fixed the thematic part of it for what we were talking about anyway. So
I like it.
we don't want to drag it on too long, but I recommend it. I think it's great. This is by far one of the best social deduction games for the length in which you're actually doing,
Agreed.
and it comes with a ton of stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, I like it.
This one-
Yeah. Matt, are you more excited now than you were before?
Yeah, and
I mean, you were excited.
you
but
did mention a lot of stuff, and I think it prices at 40. So
That's a pretty good price.
it's
Yeah.
a really big box too, ain't it? If
Yeah,
I
I'm
remember
not-
right.
Yeah.
This
Now,
is
is
a
it-
personal preference.
Yeah.
The way it is there's an insert in it, and you stand all the cards up in their decks. So it does have a really good organization to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it just makes the box too big. I would have rather have a thinner box and just put all the decks in plastic sleeves,
Right.
or not plastic
Ziplocs.
sleeves, but Ziplocs. So like, kind of like Spyfall, we just throw out a big pile of stuff and be like, pick one.
Right.
That would be kind of a little bit better for me. But that's just because I have a lot of games.
Yeah.
If you don't have a lot of games,
Retail space is limited around here.
Yeah.
right. If your storage space is okay, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's a nice box, and it utilizes. Although there is nowhere to put the gun in there, really. I mean, you basically just put the rule book on top of all the cards that are standing up, and you can put the gun on top of it, or you can put the gun underneath the board. But there's a big section for the tokens, which is weird because it only has like 4, and you put the gun in there, and it just it can't lay down. So I don't like. It's whatever.
And the gun is nice, but I think I would just replace it with a plastic.
Yeah, with a Nerf gun or
Yeah.
a Glock. I mean,
A real gun.
the vote will happen. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's a really cool piece to upgrade with just something silly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun. But all right, final thoughts. Recommend it? Yeah,
I do recommend it. Fun game.
Yeah, I liked it.
me too. Go out and buy this. This is very fun. And even though I'm saying at the end, we did receive this as a review copy from Smirk and Dagger Games, but as always, it does not change what we're going to say. So, really good game. That is The Menace Among Us.